If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in what's happening to the UK property market, then the UK property market stats show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and this week I'm joined by a new guest, Rob Smith. We'll come to him in a second. The purpose of this show is to tell you about what's happening in the property market right here, right now. A lot of other statistics on the property market are looking at, like the land registry data is looking at sales that took place 6, 7, 8 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide are looking at data from a matter of a couple of months ago. We're looking at last week. And last week is week 11, which is March the 11th, all the way through to Sunday the 17th of March. And as I said, that is week 11. Can you believe it? 11 weeks already into 2024. This week, I'm joined by Rob Smith. Rob Smith is ex-divisional director of Connell Sequence, a regional manager from Spicer Hart, and for the last few years has been doing an absolute sterling job as boss man of and managing director of Hunters, the 130 branch franchise network, and Whitegates, which is also part of the property franchise group with just under 30 branches. What Rob doesn't know about estate and letting agency is certainly not worth knowing. So, Rob, thanks for joining me. This is your first show. I've had a chat with you a few times, and I've always thought he knows his stuff. I think he'll make an excellent statistician and guru on the property market. So, thanks for joining me on your first show, and I'm sure it won't be your last either, mate.
No, I'm very grateful for your joy to join you today, Chris. Thanks very much for the invite, and yeah, looking forward to delving into some figures and numbers.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the show is as follows. The first probably two-thirds of the show looks at the United Kingdom. We're looking at both sales and lettings, primarily mainly sales, where we look at listings, we look at price reductions, we look at sales agreed, fall-throughs and exchanges. What we'll then do is then look at the rental market, looking at what's happening to average rents, number of properties coming on the market, the general market, with some very surprising stats that will certainly raise an eyebrow. That should take us around to minute 40 mark. And then after that, we're going to go to a town or a city where we're actually going to deep dive and look specifically at a local property market. And we're going to be using a very fancy piece of kit called Insights from the firm 20EA. This is a piece of kit which any agent can have, and there is a free light version which enables you to look at what's happening in a particular property market and see which agents are performing the best. So if you're having trouble with your fees or wanting to get more valuations and you need some marketing collateral to actually prove that you are the best estate agent in your town or city, then this bit of kit could be for you. Although I must stress, I'm not being paid to mention the bit of kit. It's just that they give me the bit of kit for free, and in return, I give you the show in return. Do check them out if you want this bit of kit, because I'm going to be looking at Milton Keynes. What I'm going to be showing you now is the paid for version, and it's not a lot of money in my humble opinion. Please don't mention my name, but it is just, if you're an estate agent looking to improve your lot, then it could be for you. Anyway, Rob, let us dive in and have a look at the UK stats for this week. Well, as always, Rob, we always start with the listings. So I'll just spend a minute or so on the listings, and then you, as a guru, can give your thoughts. This week, in terms of week 11, as I said, just to remind you, it's Monday the 11th of March to Sunday the 17th. As a country, we put on 37,791 properties. Year to date, we are up to 370,293 properties that have come onto the market since the start of the year. And on the graph here, the white line is the number of listings each and every single week, compared to the pink line, which is 23, the green line 19, the turquoise 18, and the blue line 2017. And the average price of a property that's come onto the market this week is £441,000. What's your thoughts, Rob?
I think it's a very positive message, I would suggest, in that a record week last week, I think that was, in terms of certainly for the last 5 or 6 years, a week-on-week isolation, it was a very strong week. Year to date, a good number of properties coming onto the market. Think it shows that there's a real good appetite for vendors wanting to sell, whether they're moving up market, exiting, or moving down market. I think it's a really positive sign for everybody. I mean, 370,000 is the most there's been year to date for quite some time. So, from my perspective, it's a marketplace where there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to put a good chunk of properties on the market every week or every month. It's consistent, I would suggest, when you look at those numbers.
Certainly is consistent. I mean, just to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, last week it was 37,900, and the week before 37,004, the week before that 36,1, and the week before that 33,6, although I believe that was a February half-term week. When we actually have a quick look at the property market in terms of the year, in terms of how that compares to previous weeks, we'll just pull up the stats now. And like you say, I mean, year to date, as I said, 370,000. The average of 17 to 19, 2017 to 2019, which are considered more, if there is such a thing as a normal year, was 335,700. Again, let's just remember 370,000. So that means that we are 9.1% ahead of last year, and we are 10.3% year to date ahead of 17, 18, and 19. Okay. Happy to move on to price reductions?
Yeah, definitely.
Right then. So price reductions this week were 20,320. Last week it was 19.6, week before 19.6, week before 19.2, week before that 17.9, which again was half-term week. So that means that we are reducing still consistently in the UK property market around 1 in 8 properties per month. The average price of a property being reduced, and that was the asking price of the property when it got reduced, not before it got reduced. It's 397,000. That's remained pretty stagnant. It was 398 last week, 398 the week before that, 390, and 388 the week before that. So what is particularly interesting is that the average price of a property coming on the market is 441. The average price of a property, and that's pretty consistent, and the average price of a property being reduced is 397, which means that the lower price properties are being reduced, of high propensity to reduce. So you guys are putting the posher properties on the market, the higher price properties, you're not reducing the prices as much. Let's move on and look. And anything to say on that before we go and look at gross sales?
I think it's interesting in terms of listing price. We always talk about trying to list it at the right price, don't we? And give the vendor the best advice possible, trying to get the best price for the vendor. It's still evident that there's a lot of vendors that want to try it. They want to give it a whirl at the best price they possibly can, think they can get a good price. And quite a lot of agents, obviously, and understandably saying to the vendor, look, okay, then you want to sell, you want the best price, let's give it a whirl for you. And if it doesn't work, let's reduce. So that's, I suppose, in one respect, you could see that as quite a good practice that we're at least realigning the stock if it's not moving. Nothing worse than lots of houses on the market that are overpriced and not selling.
Now, what is particularly interesting is you said, let's have a go. And I certainly believe that as estate agents, as long as it's not stupid, that we should have a go. But there are certain estate agents who are very guilty of the valuer puts it on the market, pretty boy, pretty girl valuer, not very good at vendor contact. The negs are probably not particularly sharp, have not been used to getting price reductions. There are some agents that are really good at vendor management and therefore bringing their prices down quickly, within a reasonable length of time, whilst there are others that just have it hanging around like a bad smell. What actions do you think estate agents should be? Is it as simple as creating decent systems to ensure that if she doesn't sell after 3 or 4 weeks, something's done about it and it's not just forgotten? Stock levels are growing and it could very easily be left. What would you recommend estate agents do with regard to vendor management to ensure that the prices are reduced if we have just had a go?
The first thing for me, Chris, all the time is we've got to be honest on the sofa. We've got to make it very clear to the vendor what price we believe the market is suggesting. And if the vendor wants to try it a bit higher, then it's clear that that is quite understandable. That's what they want to do, but that's what they feel their house is worth, rather than what an agent's advising. So I think getting clarity in the first place with a client to make sure that they understand that your price is different, and then the tried and tested method, Chris, is to write it into the contract that you would say after a period of time you reduce the house, because that's honesty then, and you actually have got an agreement that's got clear expectations with the vendor that if I haven't sold it in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever your market suggests, the property price needs to come down. And then agents won't, or agents shouldn't be then accused of overvaluing just to get the instruction and then badgering the vendor to death to try and get the house on the reduced and sold.
Do you think we as an industry are particularly good at our training and development, especially, I mean, I've always said and been quite controversial that I think the valuer should do all the vendor contact and shouldn't be leaving it to the next. A lot of people disagree with me on that one. But let's be frank, the vast majority of negotiators are probably in their 20s. They haven't been through a more challenging market. They probably came in 2021 when, anything sold, just whacked it on the market and the thing sold. Do you think we're good enough at training our people and more importantly, developing them?
Yeah, I think I'd suggest we could be better in most places. Good agents are good. To be fair, good agents are good, and they're very competent, and the right person does the right job. And I think that was one thing that we sort of really wanted to drive home to our people is the right person picks the phone up and has the right conversation. The most skilled person who's ready to do that job should do it. So you don't need to train everybody on everything as long as you've got specialists within your office. Going back to your comment about valuers, best job on the planet valuing people's houses. But if you're out of the office all day, sometimes you don't then get the responsibility of rectifying your price and having a chat with the vendor, eating the frog, so to speak, and saying, I'm going to have this tough conversation with my client. Which is why sometimes it could be as good as a proper vendor care done by the negotiators to update on viewings and things like that. And then maybe the call from the manager or the valuer at a designated time after 4 weeks or 6 weeks that says, right, let's have a proper delve into the marketing. Let's have a look what's worked. And that's just planning. That's just diary management, Chris. There's no reason why in 6 weeks' time it couldn't be put in the valuer's diary that they need to call that vendor, or even, do you know what? Best customer service. And I know time is of the essence. Best customer service is I'll book to come back out and eyeball you on the sofa and have another conversation with you.
Excellent, excellent idea. A big tip that I like to sometimes do that I train my clients in is if you haven't got the time, or they work from home, or they don't work from home, they work away, and you've got the only time, is you could almost do a recorded session on Zoom where you actually have all your comparables open up, your screen's ready to go, and then you record it on a solo Zoom, sharing your screen, and then you can then just press record at the start, record at the end, create the video, and then swing it over to your phone and upload it via WhatsApp to both Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. and Mr. or Mrs. and Mrs. and whatever, and almost do like, right, we've tried it for 4 weeks, here's your stats, this is your competition, this is what's sold, this is what you're up against, therefore these are my recommendations, as opposed to just ringing them up saying, I think you need to drop 30 grand without any evidence. But if you back it up with fact and use emotion as well, I know you want to move to the south of France, let's get you moved. Then if you use the sales psychology techniques, which again, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a sales environment, we're dealing with people. So have you been on some sales psychology training? I mean, and the wonderful thing, Rob, is this. There's so much free stuff out there on YouTube. You don't even need to go on a training session. You have to
Yeah.
put the time in. You have to put the time in. Right.
I think just picking up on that one just quickly, Chris, I think good idea to send it out. What I'd possibly prefer is if you're clever enough to do that, then you send it across with all your stats and your numbers and what you've done, and then maybe it's but I'm going to give you a call in a couple of days to have a conversation with you about what I suggest you do next.
I think that's a great idea because then you're completing the circle and
Correct.
you are, they know that they're going to have to be made. You're making them accountable for their property by
And
throwing the.
hopefully they realise it's a bit too expensive and they're ready for a phone call from you where it says, we need to readjust the price. So yeah.
Indeed, and remember, ladies and gentlemen out there in a state agency, remember what the motivation was of why they moved and work everything around that. And you'll be amazed what a phone call, what a sleep, leaving them. I'll give you a call in a few days, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, well, we do want to move to the south of France. Maybe you have to listen to this. So just bear that in mind. Right, that was just a graph here about price changes as a percentage of listings. So it just shows you that for every 100 properties that come in on the market, we are reducing 53.77, which is slightly above the running long-term average. But I would expect that because we had some low months, low years, pardon me, in the COVID years. Right, let's move back. Let's go to gross sales. Pardon me. So, gross sales this week, we have sold 20,320, which is the highest number this year. And if you can see on this graph here, it is much higher than 2019, which is the red, 2018, which is the greeny color, 2017, which was the 17, and so obviously 2024 is the white number here. To say to someone, literally 80, if you'd have said 18 months ago after the trust budget that 18 months later, the number of sales would be heads and shoulders above what was happening in the market, that people would have laughed at you. The average price, so therefore, I just said, I did, do you know, mix my bloody numbers up here. It's 25,700. I'm looking at the wrong number. My humblest apologies, ladies and gentlemen. 25,718, but it's still the highest number compared to other years. And the average price of a property selling is 368. The average price, as I said, 363. I'm mixing my numbers up today. The gap between the listing price and the sale agreed price this week was, let me just pull up the number. 441 is the average price coming on the market, and 363 is the average price of the sale agreed, which means there's a 21% gap on that. I prefer that. The long-term average is 16 or 17%. So what's your thoughts on the sales figures?
I think, as with the listing figures, it's pretty strong, and it shows that there is a good marketplace out there. We've had buyer demand for quite a few years now, where we've been inundated with lots of people wanting to purchase property, and we probably lacked a bit of vendor demand. We probably had less vendors committing to sell, and we came into the year hoping that we'd have a bit more vendor demand. I wouldn't say we've got the perfect storm in terms of we've got a lot of vendors wanting to sell and we've got a lot of buyers wanting to buy, but I do think it's heading more towards that than what we've seen for quite a while. So it's quite good that if you're a good estate agent, you know that you've got vendors wanting to sell, you've got buyers wanting to buy. I know it sounds simple. You've got to match them together, and a lot of matching them together is getting the price right and communicating with people.
Absolutely bang on. Please, ladies and gentlemen, we're too reliant on Rightmove. Don't let Rightmove do your thing. Let's build some chains. Give you an idea, gross sales, as I said, year to date, 251,854, which is 10.6% further on than the same year to date figure at 227,766 in 2023. And it's 8.9% higher than the average of 17, 18, or 19. And again, I think all of us would take that. Now, interestingly, in terms of year to date, we can see the chart on here. This is the number of sales that we are up. This is up to the 16th of March, both 2024, and we compared the 1st of Jan up to the 16th of March 2023. And you can see here that the leader of the pack here is London. London is 24.6% higher year to date. And interestingly, if we split that one down, if we look at inner London, Rob, and inner London is N, NW, WSW, SE, E, and then the two central postcodes. Central London is up 26.4% this year, 15,137 sales agreed compared to 11,977. And outer London, 10,333 against 8,459. Yeah, listen, I mean, it's interesting that the South seems to be doing the best compared to last year. But then, is that because the South got hit hardest from last year? I don't know, but I mean, everyone watching, you're going to have your own opinions. Do you have an opinion on this?
I was going to say initially when we were looking at the other prices, the big gap between what was coming on the market, prices on the market, and then prices sold, there was quite a big gap between that, and that made me think that it was the cheaper properties probably turning quicker.
It
So
is.
we've got,
It is. What you tend to find, is the lower price properties have a higher propensity to sell. That's why that gap, the bigger price properties don't sell so much. And just to give you an idea, in London, for every 100 houses that they put on the market, they will expect to shift and get exchanged and completed on around 30, late
oof,
20s, early 30s. Whilst if you go to Scotland, you would expect at the moment to be paid on 65 to 70 of them percent.
yeah,
Interestingly, year to date, since the 1st of January for the whole of the UK, we are presently at 50.3. So out of the all the number of properties that have left the estate agent's books since the 1st of Jan 2024, we've only been paid on 50.3% of them. Isn't that scary as hell?
it's just an amazing amount of wasted time for everybody and money for everybody. So, but on your map, how can that not be? And I'm going to
Okay, so
repeat
this is
myself,
this
a
is
positive message.
this is a positive method. This is just raw, hard number of sales coming at the top of the pipeline compared to the same frame last year. I mean, again, we can see it here, 251 versus 227. But I think by visualizing it and regionalizing it, we get to see a flavor of what's coming on the market, and more importantly, what's selling.
I,
Okay.
I think without, I think without wanting everybody to spend money at the moment, estate agents to spend money, it says that there's a market to be had, though, doesn't it? It says that if you're brave and you know what you're doing and you're a good agent, you can invest at the moment in your business, and you probably will steal a chunk of the market because there's the market there to be had.
It certainly is, and I think a lot of agents, when things are a bit tough, they tend to, hey, the market's a bit tough. So what we'll do is we'll reduce the marketing. When in reality, every report beyond doubt says when things get tough, increase your marketing because your competitors will be reducing it and you'll get more bang for your bucks. But if it's a crazy market, people spend loads of money, but it's so much noise, and there's just bear that in mind. Just a couple of graphs here showing the average price of a property selling versus the average asking price of a property coming on the market, but week by standalone week 11, and then the percentage differences. As I said, 21.3 long-term average for the whole of that 7 8 years is 16 or 17%. Any more comments on the gross sales before we go and look at fall throughs?
No, it's just strong.
Right then. So number of fall throughs this week are 5,049, which is a ratio of 19.63. So we've gone back down below 20%. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've not watched the show before, to ignore those two Christmas spikes. The numbers are so low at Christmas, and because this is a percentage, it's going to be a bit all over the place. So you're just looking at the long-term trends. I mean, let's just remind ourselves the quasi-Kwarteng Q4 budget, which was back in September Q3 of 2022, fall through rates of in the 40s. She went down. She's around the 20% mark. Interest rates kicked in, bit more fall throughs. We were then hovering around 30%, and she's been on a slow downward trajectory since the summer of 23. And now, as I said, we're hovering around the 1 in 5 mark. Isn't it interesting that the industry thinks 1 in 3 sales fall through? The actual is 24.28, which means 1 in 4. But at the moment, we are on 1 in 5, which I think is really important to note and be chuffed to bits with. This is the weeks themselves standalone, and that's the numbers. Thoughts on fall throughs, Rob?
Again, I think 1 in 5 is, if you can work in 1 in 5, you're doing well. Um, it's consistent, and it's also, I think when you look at all of these numbers, Chris, you've got some probability in there that says, I know roughly what it's likely to be moving forward. I know what it's been like. I know what it's looking like now. I know that if I list X, I'll sell Y and I'll exchange on Z. And there's some good, strong, positive um, probability and ratios within the market at the moment, I think. So that's good for business owners, and it's good for people who can benchmark themselves onto these numbers, because that's one of the keys for me. Using these numbers to benchmark yourself in your business and see how you're doing compared to these is a great. I appreciate it's regional and it can be different, but you know what? There are some real solid numbers in there that are traditional.
I mean, what I would say, ladies and gentlemen, again, all this data has come from the 20EA Insights platform. If you were to purchase it, and as I said, please do not mention my name because I do not get any commission on this, but you can find these stats for your own town. You can download them and then you can make them look like pretty graphs. I make them like pretty graphs, but the data is out there. And I think we're very guilty, Rob, of always comparing ourselves to last year. But
Yeah.
let's be honest, 2021 and 22 were weird years. 23, I mean, they're all a bit strange. I think by looking at it in the long term, get a flavor of where you're going. I find it fascinating that there are estate agents out there that are waving their willies, pardon the pun, ladies, who are bragging. And then you go and look at their data, and you can see that their market share has been drifting downwards or what, it's fascinating that those that seem to shout the loudest don't judge your life by an agent that seems to be bragging all the time. Some of them are not doing as well as you think they are. Oh, didn't say that, did I, Rob? Don't worry, no one watches the show. No one's going to listen to this. Let's look at net sales. So net sales, which is the number of gross sales, which we said was 25,718. That's the number of fall throughs this week, which is 5,049, which means the number of net sales is 20,669. There you can see that on the graph there, and that's how it compares to other week 11s. Year to date, we are on 197,600 net sales, which is 106.4% of the 17, 18, and 19 average, and is actually 14.1% higher than it was last in 2023. Just having a quick look at the graph. Oh, hold on a second. It's moving around, isn't it? There we go. Come on, let's get that sorted out. There we go. So the white line here, ladies and gentlemen, is 2024, and you can see that we are £2,000 or £3,000, not £1,000 numbers numerically. So the orange line is the, as I said, the average of 17 to 19, and the pink line is the last year, 2023. We are ahead of that. You can see here that can you see the yellow line there, Rob?
Yeah.
And the drop down 2020, that is the effect of COVID on the market.
COVID, yeah.
Oh, it just blows me away what happened there. And that just shows you what happened in the market. The blue line, the turquoise line is 22 and the green line is 21. So you can see that, it was another 50% more, but those were crazy times. Anything on net sales before we carry on?
No, I think that's all logical, really, Chris. When you look at good gross sales and slightly less cancellations, should get us a good net sales result. So, yeah, what I'd expect to see.
We saw this last week, ladies and gentlemen, but you might have not seen it. This is the number of properties that were for sale as we on the last day of every single month. The yellow line is the end of February, so in this case, the 28th or 29th, depending if it was a leap year. And as we entered March, there were 541,200 properties for sale. All the yellow lines are the same Februaries going back the years. So again, I find it fascinating that whilst there is a lot more properties on the market, if you compare it with, say, Feb 22, where it was just under 400,000, then yes, of course, there's 15% more properties on the market now. Actually, it's a lot more than that. It's nearer 25% more. But when you look at other years like 17, 18, or 19, there's still a good chunk, 15 to 20% below those sort of levels. And it's important that we keep an eye on the stock levels, because when stock doesn't begin to sell and properties remain on the market, supply and demand means that prices tend to go down if supply goes up and demand doesn't match with it. Any thoughts on that before we look at the sale agreeds pipeline?
I think when you look at the stock that we've currently got and you compare it to 17 and 18, not that dissimilar, is it?
No, it's
And also in 21, but go back to 17, 18, which was a more traditional marketplace. The one difference that is very evident though is if our net sales are up, we've got equivalent vendor demand as we had then, but we've definitely got better buyer demand. We must have better buyer demand now than we had in 17 and 18. Otherwise, because there's no other reason why the net sales wouldn't be so strong.
absolutely bang on there. Absolutely bang on. Um, Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, just to give you an idea of the power of stock that's on the market, if we go back to uh, end of Feb, early March 2008, God, I can't get my words out today. That number was between 1.3 and 1.4 million. So just bear that in mind in terms of stock levels that we were, that's why it's really important we keep an eye on these stock levels and we see a general trend. You'll notice they always tend to go up in the summer, then down, up and down, like a uppy down thing. Just keep an eye on that one, but it was 2008. That's when we went to 1.4 million. And that's what we need to keep an eye on. And what I would advise you to do, ladies and gentlemen, pardon me, is you could do the same in your own town by just going onto Rightmove and just measuring how many properties are presently for sale, and then include the sold subject to contracts, then take the one away from the other. So you get the number of availables, number of sale agreeds, and then also do a ratio of the two, and just do that every single month, and you'll get a trend of where the market's going. It's so simple, but isn't it like most things in life, Rob? The simple things are the most effective, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. Too many people trying to make things too complicated.
Indeed. That just comes, ladies and gentlemen, that comes through from grey hair and a little bit of experience. Although not perfect at a lot of things, but when you get a bit of grey hair, you realise that actually it's, estate agency is, it is hard work, but at the same time, it really is get people to put your house on the market with you, find a great buyer, and make sure you get the sell through. It, it sounds simple. It isn't. It's not easy, but it is simple. Right. These are the number of properties in terms of unit numbers that are in estate agent sales pipelines. This was and all the yellows are February and it's the end of the month. So as we went in at midnight on the 1st of March, there were 382,864 properties in estate agents sales pipelines with agents. And some people are going to say, well, is some of that to do with the fact that solicitors are so slow and sluggish? If you actually go back and look at social media posts, the length of sale between in 17, 18 or 19 has not changed a great deal. It's always been around the 17-week to 19-week mark. It hasn't changed. That figure just grown throughout the early 20s and the late teens. 382. I mean, again, if you said to an estate agent your sales pipeline is 20% further on than it was before the COVID, most people wouldn't believe you, would they, Rob?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. And going back to the same as we were saying earlier on, is it just says that there is a market. There really is a market out there for people to grab hold of. But the key is you got to work hard to get it. But
Absolutely
it's
right.
there.
But isn't that like most things in life? It's all about hard work and patience.
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't got the updated figures yet on the pounds per square foot, so that somebody that watched the show, but we'll hopefully next month, at the end of next show or the show before, we'll have a look at the pound per square foot figure and the importance of that. This is the number of properties for sale in the regions. Now, to be honest with you, that graph is quite large, and you lots of lines. So what I've actually done here is the number of properties that are for sale today, well, at the end of Feb, going into March, compared to um, a year before that, so end of Feb into March. And you can see here that Northern Ireland are down 6.4%, but everyone else is up somewhere in the order of around 10, 11, 20 or 12% on average. Um, any thoughts on that?
I just think good available stock everywhere. Um,
I-
Southwest's quite high, isn't it? That's quite a significant difference from the southeast and London.
we're going about to come and look at the rental data in a second, Rob. Something really weird is happening in the southwest with the rental market. There's just whoa. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go and have a look. Now, what I would say, ladies and gentlemen, is this. All the graphs that you're looking at today are available to download on YouTube. You go to YouTube, look at the description of the video, scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a little link there. You can use them for personal use in the office, and you can use them on valuations to show your vendors. But what I do ask is that they're not used on social media. I have to keep something back for myself and my clients to use. But so they will use some of these on social media, but you can use them on your own valuations to prove you know what you're talking about with properties. And that's my gift to you as the industry. Okay, should we go and look at some rental data, Rob?
Yeah.
Okay, so this shows you here the average monthly rent by region, and so you can see the regions across the bottom. And the number in red is the average rent from 2016, and the number above the yellow line is the average rent in 2024. Okay, so I know we've only had a couple of months, but we're nicely on the way. And you'll see that there's some fantastic growth here. Some notable ones which I just want to highlight is is London. Look how everyone else just leveled off. So we're looking at the greeny, bluey colours, which was 19, 21, and 22. Or was it 20? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the numbers are up here. Here we go. Um, but look at London. Can you remember everyone? There was like an exodus of properties leaving London. Everyone left London in the COVID.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show you this graph. This is on a monthly basis, but you can see here the average here, and then this was in 2020 where it dropped. So there's a lot of people in London who rented when rents were really cheap, and the difference between here and here is, £2,000 there, 3,000, 3,300. So I do buy to let evenings for my clients where they invite me in and I will do a presentation about the power of buy to let and why it will continue to grow. And this lady said, but rents have gone up 50, 60%. And I said, can I make a mind reading? Did your son rent in London for the first time in the summer of 2020? She said, yes. And then I showed her this graph that, look, rents dropped because the number of properties that came onto the market just went absolutely. And I just show, there we go. Here you go. The red line is inner London, which is N, NW, SW, SE, E, and the central postcodes. Look at that growth. Everyone else, there has been a drifting downwards. And again, that graph here is the same graph as this one. This is the number of available properties to rent. Okay, but this one here has removed the southeast and London because the southeast is the yellow line and the red line is London. So these all looks like a vanilla slice. Oh, I could just do with one of them. So we've just repeated the graph without London and southeast. So you can see there's a general trend downwards, which means rents have gone up, unfortunately. I mean, I do feel sorry for people with rents that have grown. But let me ask you a question, Rob. The average rent in UK back in 2016 was 1,390, and the average rent in the last 3 months has been 1,749. And it is interesting. I had a boss man of an estate agency chain, mainly from the north, with 80 branches. He says, I don't recognize those numbers, but what is particularly interesting is this. London by itself, inner London, is 4 or 5 times the size of the northwest or northeast in terms of size. That's why London just really just drags the numbers up. But so hence why we have to split them down here. But what is particularly interesting, Rob, is this. Even though the rents have gone up by 25.8%, inflation since 2016 has gone up by 30.6%. Which means in real terms, real spending power terms, rents today are 4.8% cheaper than they were in 2016. Does that shock you?
Almost incomprehensible when you think about how much rents have gone up. Doesn't make any sense, really, does it? The huge. I mean, it's a big chunk of everybody's disposable income these days, isn't it? the rent
Well,
when it's increased that much.
well, okay, here we go. This is again, perception is everything. That the average rent taken out of someone's salary in 2016 was, just working out, hold on, was 29.6%, right? Today, 30.1%, 30.1.
So it's very similar.
It's very similar. It's the perception.
Yeah.
And I think we as estate and letting agents need to be aware of this data that yes, and what is again, let's just remind ourselves is in the vast majority of occasions, rents have been pretty static in 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. What's happened is they've just caught up. And as I said, okay, look at the Southwest. Now, rents after inflation's been taken into account are still 19.7% higher. So what's happening in the Southwest? I don't know. But look at that. Outer London, 11.9. So that's, and inner London, where's inner London? 3.8% cheaper. Northeast, 16.2% in real terms, not headline terms. There's your headline numbers, but in real spending terms. Now, that's not, we must stress, ladies and gentlemen, household budgets are being hit by other costs, aren't they, Rob? It's hard work out
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Cost of living. Yeah, your
Yes.
energy bills, your food bills, everything's gone. Yeah.
Okay. But if you are ever challenged as an agent saying, well, how can my rent's going up, you're busting inflation, then why don't you show them this data? I produce this, my daytime job is I create content for estate and letting agents on their towns. So I produce data like this, but on towns. But you can get this data yourself, or you can look at this data yourself and choose your region. That in reality, the vast majority of occasions, it's not the landlords being greedy because they're not actually taking. If they were above inflation, then we'd have and some of these locations they are. But let's look at the Northwest, 4% over a period of 8 years. It's not bad. It's not end of the world stuff. Okay.
What was interesting just on your last graph with the UK property graph 29 was the slight trend at London, outer London, and southeast, where rents have just dropped.
Yep, they have just dropped.
Everybody else is still on a similar slight increase, but apart from Scotland, and that says it's just realigning to the marketplace, isn't it?
It certainly is. Let's just see if I can find my data. There's a lot of data flying around. Hold on, here we go. So, hold on a second. Sorry, mate. Got more spreadsheets than you can throw a stick at. Here we go. On me. So the average rent in inner London for the last 2 months has been 3,161, whilst the average rent back end of last year was 3,221. So she's just dipping down. Now, there was interesting, there was a report by Chesterton saying rents are down off asking prices at 10%. Doesn't mean rents are actually down. It just means that people are being a bit more realistic with their pricing. But these are actual data in terms of what's been let and sorted out. Okay, I think that's the end of anything on this before we go to Milton Keynes.
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Rob. And let's go to Milton Keynes. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are using, as I said before, the 20EA Insights platform. This is it, okay? And let us go to Milton Keynes. For the purposes of what we are looking for with Milton Keynes, we program this into the computer, and it is, we'll just put it up, MK1, 10 through to 19, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So lots of chunky postcodes there. Okay. We are going to be looking at between the 1st of the 1st, 2019 and the 17th of March. And the first thing we're going to be looking at is what you'll notice here is that in that time period, 32,421 properties have come onto the market. And we can see here, let us have a look at how all the different estate agents have performed in Milton Keynes. Kicking off with Connells. And it looks like Connells are growing their market share quite close to head office there at Leighton Buzzard. But it looks like Connells are actually doing really well there. What you tend to find with most Connells sequence offices is that they have a position and they're just plodding away quite nicely, neither growing nor dropping. You know, I'll give them their due. I know you used to work for them yourself. They do know how to run a good corporate estate agency. But there you go. You can see here that their growth from around 7 or 8% up to an average of around 12 or 13 is really good, isn't it, Rob?
That's a huge increase, isn't it? That's
I,
quite a demanding. That is quite well, in its extremely strong and market leading position, isn't it,
I
compared
think
to everybody else? So, be interested. I'm not familiar with that location as much as others, but be interested to know how many branches each of those cover.
indeed. So let's go and look at Taylor's. Now, I believe we'd need to check this, but they are part of a chain. It looks like their market share has drifted down slightly. Isn't it interesting that the average price of a property coming on the market throughout the period was nearest down at 360? Connells were at 301, which means that they are a lower to middle agent, and Taylor's also at 307, a lower to middle agent in terms of their average price, but their market share does seem to be dropping slightly. Let's go and look at Coldwell Property Services. They seem to be doing quite well, just a slight drift downwards, but again, 5-6% doing okay. Let's go look at Michael Anthony, small operation in Bedfordshire. Decent agent, yeah, good operation. Does look like though that their market share is drifting slightly from around 8% to around 4 or 5%. Let's go look at Urban and rural are a bit like a collective where it's like a halfway between like a franchise and a collective, like a partnership. It appears there that they seem to be pretty just treading water quite nicely around 5%, with an average price of 336. Let's just have a quick look at the average price of Michael Anthony and Coldwell's at 363. So it looks like Coldwell's are probably just a slightly higher. Let's go look at Brown and Merry. I'd expect them to be a slightly posher agent at 350. They seem to be just doing their funky stuff at around 5%. Elevation, hovering around 4. Let's go look at CR Purple Bricks in a slightly downward direction. Isn't it interesting? Purple Bricks' market shares actually for the last 3 or 4 months been in an upward direction, and we have not seen that for an awful long time. Their general trend has been in a downward direction, but nationally they are growing and have grown for the last 4 or 5 months. So what don't count them off yet, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go look at Alan Francis. And they seem to be hovering around the 4% mark with an average price of 311. Let's go look at Michael Graham. Now, Michael Graham are a upper quartile agent based in that Buckinghamshire area. I've met Simon, their boss man, a number of times. I've always been really impressed with him. And you can quite clearly see here that the average price of 663 shows that they're upper quartile. We will go and look at the upper quartile, ladies and gentlemen, at the end. Carter's, again, 311. They seem to be hovering around 3. Thomas Connolly. Okay. Going to look at Mustard Homes. Hart, used to work for Hart, hovering around 2%. Taylor Walsh, decent agent. Like him, he's a good lad. He's hovering around the 2% mark. Let's go and look at Keller. I tell you, it's interesting here. There's no EXP.
Mm.
No, they're not.
That's
No.
a surprising. In such a big, diverse marketplace, you'd have thought there'd have been a space.
There you go. Let's go and look at Keller. Okay, they've grown, hovered around 2 or 3%, just drifted down slightly. Let's go and look at King Estate Agents. Inspired. Okay. Obviously, a big that was there you go. That would have been COVID. So again, that's going to bump those numbers up. Beasley and Partners. We'll just have a just quick look at these stats here, just to show you, ladies and gentlemen, because you Wilson Peacock, Alexander Lawrence, there's Yopa and Jackson Stops. Right, let's go and just have a quick look at the upper quartile, so or upper quintile, upper fifth. We'll see how we get on there. 32, so we are looking for somewhere a number around 6,000. Here we go. See what there is. Okay, upper quartile seems to kick. Okay, there you go. £500,000 upwards. Let's just go and see who the agents of choice. I suspect Michael Graham. Yep, there's Michael Graham.
Yeah.
And it's good to see Michael Graham are literally heads and shoulders above everyone there at 15.21%. So well done, Michael Graham's there. But it does seem to be going in a drift downwards direction. Let's go and look at Coldwell Property Services. Seem to be hovering around the 6% mark. Look at Connells. Again, well done, Connells. Not only are you growing your lower end, but you are also growing your upper end as well. So let's look at PB, Taylor Walsh. Remember, this is upper quartile. Brown and Merry. So Michael Graham seemed to be head and shoulders, but again, I would be slightly concerned if I was Simon that my market share is drifting down slightly. Let's just have
And
a
quite,
just.
and quite possibly being just the stats say that it looks like it's Connells that are eating into it.
So now just gone down for 750,000 upwards, or actually let's go 1 million. Um, Okay, so in the 1 million mark, Michael Graham's are pretty static. So it looks like it's that 600 to 7, around that 750, 800,000 marks, which appears to be where Michael Graham just lost a little bit of their market. Damn good estate agent. Anything on this before we move on and look at the sales and things like that?
Now, only other thing to make an obvious point on is it's all well and good selling top end property, but you still need to charge a good fee for doing it. Otherwise, the lower volume doesn't work for you. So if you're going to do lower volume but higher prices, and this is for any marketplace, you still got to charge what you're worth and get a damn good fee for doing it. You're losing that opportunity.
Indeed. Okay, let's just have a this is again, the devil is always in the detail with data. Okay. That we're going to hover over this. So this is the number of so you, ladies and gentlemen of Milton Keynes, at the end of February, there were 2,959 properties for sale in Milton Keynes in Feb 19. That had dropped down to 1,682 by Feb 22. We're now back up to 2,757. So that a lot of people would miss. So if you've got someone saying, well, I want to sell, but I don't want to drop my price, you can say, well, there's nearly 50% more houses for sale,
Yeah.
168 versus 27. So that's that's 50% more, nearest damn it. There's your proof.
Price sensitive marketplace, that's going to be, isn't it?
Again, those numbers are pretty normal compared to the rest of the UK. There's nothing there that's screaming. But again, just have a look at the stock levels, and that's our friends at Connell's going in an upward direction. I will be sending this report to David Plumtree. He'll be really, really chuffed with that. So he's boss man of Connell's. Okay, let's move on and look at this chart here. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to move the data to the last 12 months. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is from the 17th of March 23 to the 17th of March 24. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me just spend a minute or so just explaining, because there is some absolute gold in here for some estate agents, and there are some areas of improvement. Rob, I want you to start looking at fall through rates and the price changes in a second. I'll be back to you in about 90 seconds. Right, ladies and gentlemen, everyone's looking at your new instructions and new instruction market share. Good for you. Sold subject to contracts, that's great. But the magic is in these four columns here, ladies and gentlemen. There is absolute gold here if you've performed, because the simple fact is that if we don't exchange contracts on a property, you're not getting paid, your boss is not getting paid, and the homeowner doesn't move home. And an agent only gets a property only leaves an estate agent's books for two reasons. She exchanges or she withdraws. Obviously, if she withdraws, it should go to another agent. That's beside the point, but that's a fee that you've lost. And the magic thing is this, okay? In this period here, March to March 23 to 24, 42.78% of properties that Connell's properties that left the books, they've been paid on. But 57.22 have not been paid on because they've been withdrawn. So you can say if you were Connell's, that your exchange rate is basically for every 100 houses you put on the market, you're going to get, I've got a 42.78% chance of moving. So Taylors are slightly higher at 45, and Coldwell's are slightly higher again at 49, and Elevation is at 52, and Michael Anthony is at 56. So therefore, this is nothing against Connell's, because again, I've got a lot of respect for them. But if we do 56.36 divided by 42.78, that's a 31.7% greater proportional chance of getting moved if you went on the market with Michael Anthony compared to Connell's. That's pretty powerful stuff, isn't it, Rob? That you can say you've got just over a 31% greater chance of moving with me. And here is the data. This data, most people will just miss this, but the gold is in the data. The
I think
money,
you're right. It goes back to comments we were making earlier on when we were talking about pricing properties, being having clarity with the vendor on what your price is to sell, not your price to market, because anybody can market a property. You got to sell it, got to get the person moved. And what I've always found is that the more just by the nature of it, the more you stick on the market, the less you sell, because the less time you spend on your vendor care, the less time you spend on being able to um, talk to the client and review the price. But there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of price changes still. So when you look at price changes, there's still a lot of price changes there that still hasn't affected a sale. So how many price changes do you need in some of these agents to get your house sold?
indeed.
Be wary of the price that you're given in the first place.
Now, you said about the more houses you put on, the less likely you are to sell. Generally, that is the case. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have the chance, go and look at last week's show, which is week 10, 2024, where we were looking at Chesterfield. And their agency is the number one for listings, but also the highest for exchange and the lowest for fall through. Their fall through rate was 12%. And he rang me up afterwards and said, actually, it's lower than that. Because again, the data, we're using 20 EA data, but
I'd suggest he's got his processes right, Chris.
he is an exceptional estate agent. And ladies and gentlemen, red bricks at Chesterfield and Sheffield, quite simply, Mark Ross and his team are in the top 5 or 10 estate agents in the UK that I look up to. There's not many I look up to, but that is an amazing operation that you really do must check out. So just ladies and gentlemen, let's just share some numbers here. So the exchange ratio in the last year is 43. The 44.35% of properties are being price changed with a fall through rate of 26.97, and you can compare yourselves. Let's just have a quick look. What I will just do now is Michael Graham are at 51, but remember they have higher price properties. So what you tend to find is that you do have lower numbers at the. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to look at two things. Firstly, let's go back in time and look at 22. Might be interesting for everyone. Now all of a sudden the exchange ratio goes up to 57 and the price changes are much lower. I thought that was interesting. Okay, let's just bring it back. Okay, nearest, damn it. There you go. Let's go look at the upper quartile. So I'm going to do 750, okay? And you can quite clearly see here that Michael Graham do a particularly good job at the £750,000 upper range because they exchange on 47.14, whilst Taylor Walsh at 35. And Jackson stops at 38 and Fine and Country at 30 with other numbers down there. So you can see here that it looks like Michael Graham have the upper quartile or upper quintile really sewed up there quite nicely. But obviously Taylor Walsh, you've got plenty to go for there. Have a look at that and just see if you can better yourself. Any of that before we move on to the next screen?
A, a huge amount not selling.
It's going to be, but again, this is the price range we're in. We're at the 750
Yeah,
range plus. Remembering the average price was 358,
yeah.
which for the UK is quite inexpensive. Still a lot of money in my language, but compared to London. Right, okay. So this screen here again, lots and lots of gorgeous data here, which a lot of people will miss out on. So for those of you who have not seen this screen before, buckle in, here we go. So what has happened here is this is the last 12 months. We have, when I say we, 20 EA have looked at all of the 792 properties that Connells have put on the market and have given that property an automated valuation model, like a Valpal figure. They've done the same for Taylors and everyone else, okay? What they then do is that they then look at what did you actually put the property on the market for? So I as 20 EA will say, I think your house is worth 400 grand. What on average has that agent actually put it on the market for? And you can see here that Connells have put it on for 1.91% on average more than what the 20A think it's worth. Whilst Taylor's at 0.05 and Caldwell's 1.01, Elevation 0.08, and Michael Anthony 0.59, Urban and Rural 1.42, with all the other numbers that you can look at down there. Just going to take Taylor Wimpey with a slight pinch of salt. Mustard Homes, I'm assuming that Mustard Homes are also, I'm assuming, I don't know, but you often find that with new homes. My apologies to Mustard Homes if you're not a new home site. Okay, so that shows you the overvaluing, okay? And it's healthy to have a bit, but not too much. Moving on, price achieved. What was the price achieved from the original asking price? Connells achieved 4.03% less than the original asking price. If you remember, Connells did actually do quite a few price reductions, didn't they, if you recall?
Yeah.
Let's just remind ourselves. 53, which is slightly higher than the 44.35 that we talked about. Okay. Taylor's 3.64, Caldwell's 2.99. So therefore, if you want to know how close are you going to get to the original asking price, or what you think it's actually worth, because this is actually showing you not how, this figure shows you how close you got. Start again. This figure shows you how much you overvalued it over versus what they think it's worth. And then this column here, price achieved, what you actually achieved from your original asking price. Now, percentages do tend to screw a lot of people's heads up. So what 20EA do is this. They say, right, if every agent put on the same £400,000 house, what would each agent achieve for it? Okay. So, and all it is just using these, but both of these percentages combined and added and made applicable to a number. So therefore, if Connells put on a £400,000 house, they would achieve £391,216, which is £1,223 less than the Milton Keynes average. But Taylor's would achieve 6,808 less than the average, whilst Caldwell's would achieve 465 less than the average, and Elevation 2,400. But then there's some down here. Look at Taylor Walsh. So Taylor Walsh might not be the biggest estate agent here, but according to this data, they achieved £12,000 more than the average agent in Milton Keynes. And if they were up against Connells, 12,422 plus that, because it's the difference to the variance. So therefore, if I was Jamie at Taylor Walsh, I could say, Mrs. Miggins, I will get you £13,600 more than Connells. I'm not calling Connells. This is just the data. Pretty powerful stuff, isn't it?
It's interesting to see the less volume. So the further down the table you get, the more likely you're going to get over the price the others.
Yep.
Higher volume, you get less for your property. is what that take. That's what the stats are saying anyway.
It's interesting. I I did some data and I looked at the top 100 estate agents, which I would class as chains and large firms. I did remove out the franchises like your own. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I then looked at the agents with like one or two branches. And I will release the actual numbers in a few weeks' time when I'm ready to publish them. But the difference between the two was about a 6-7% greater chance of actually moving. I'm not talking about prices yet, but actually moving than the top agents. So the smaller agents, greater propensity to get you moved. And the price, I have done some stats in the past about prices, got you a tiny bit more, not much more, but a tiny bit more. But again, ladies and gentlemen, by having such data like this on your own town, you can use this data to your advantage to actually prove that you're worth your higher fee in case you have an issue. Because that's the biggest problem in the state agency at the moment, isn't it, Rob? Is proving that you are different, that you're worth the fee.
And most people go for um, who does the most or who it's perceived does the most. When actually that's not necessarily what it's about if you want to get the best price for your house and have the best service as well. Because service, you've got to remember, if you don't move, you don't sell your house, you've hardly had a great service because it's not delivered what was set out for.
And we haven't been paid to do the job we do, which is again
Yep.
one in two, awful. Let's look at which agent seems to be in terms of shifting the houses. This is interesting. So March 22 to March 23. On average, it took 49 days to sell a house. Today, it's 62 in the last year. So that's March 23 to March 24. These are the agents here, which just shows you the top 10 agents and how long they take to find a buyer and how long they then to subsequently then get through to completion. So Connells take on average 70 days to find from new instruction to sale agreed and 200 and then 142 days from sale agreed to completion. Whilst we then go and look at Brown, we'll go and look at say Taylor's 59 days, Alan Francis 53, Carter seemed to be quickest at 41. So again, if you were just looking at there, Carter's 153 days on average from new instruction to completion, whilst Connell's 212. So again, if your vendor was saying, I need to move quickly, great data here. Anything on this before we go and look at rentals?
Not much other than there's not a huge difference between the red bars, is there? The completion
No,
times.
no,
Not a
there's
massive difference. There's no one really knocking it out the park on how quickly they get people to completion. But there is a big difference on how quickly people can get you sold.
indeed, indeed. Let's move on and talk about lettings, okay? It's a bit more difficult, the lettings, because you're recycling the stock, so you can't market share growth is quite a difficult one to judge. But this is particularly interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the growth of open rent. So you can see here that back in 2019, 5% of properties coming on the market were with open rent, and now it is around 25%. So the issue is this: what are you doing to keep your landlords with you? Because I find it absolutely fascinating, Rob, and I know you guys at Hunters and Whitegates are big on your lettings, is all we seem to do is just bring up landlords with problems, don't we?
Yeah, I think the marketplace for landlords has changed so significantly. You've got to you've it's all about an encompassing service. It's not what it used to be.
It's not
You've
just
got
rent
you've got to,
collect. Yeah, it's not rent and bring up problems. What do you do
no.
with your landlords? Are you sitting down with them? Are you building relationships? Are you talking about their portfolio? Do you actually know what their investment is, what they want to do with it? Is their properties matching their investment? Are you looking at their yields? Are you looking at their mortgage payments? Are you saying, I think you should sell that and go and buy that? You know, it-
There's a lot of agents that just literally manage, for want of a better phrase, because that's the name of the game, isn't it? That's what they call it. They manage their portfolio but they don't really. They don't manage it because they just tick it over. The
Exactly. Yeah.
opportunity is finding the investment and finding the landlords that want to grow and helping them grow because there's not many agents that help them grow.
No, you see, the job I get paid to do is I help letting agents attract landlords to their letting agency by teaching them and guiding them and giving them content, which not only, your job is not to manage the property, your job is to, yeah, your job is to manage the property, but what are you doing to manage and more importantly, lead your landlord to meet their investment opportunities? If all you're doing is collecting the rent and bringing them up with dripping taps, no wonder you might as well go to open rent. But why aren't you sitting down? Are you doing buy-to-let evenings? Are you talking about buy-to-let deal of the week? These are all things that you should be doing. Are you talking about the local property market where the investment opportunities are? Just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Right, let's just have a quick look. Cold walls. Okay, a lot of these are just going to be, you don't see that much movement, but I just think it's just nice to see. Connell's doing well. Okay. Taylor's. Looks like leaders. Let's have a look. Okay. And probably bought someone out. Let's go and look at Martin and Co. Slight drifting downwards. Brown and Merry, Lanes, Aztec, Carter's, Prestige, Taylor Walsh, Wilson Peacock. Let's go look at Belvoir. We'll go Beasley, and we'll go to Inspired. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay. So, anything on that before we finish off?
No,
Okay. Well, Rob, you've done an absolutely cracking job.
thank you.
I will be inviting you back here. Here's an open invitation to come back in a few months' time.
Great.
You've done an absolutely cracking job. Ladies and gentlemen, do follow Rob. He's a fantastic bloke, very personal, but knows his onions. Part of the property franchise group, so do keep an eye on him, top man. Final thoughts, Rob, before we go.
As we've been going through everything, I've just scribbled a few bits down, and you can't help but see that we've got a traditional, consistent market that we're in at the moment. The numbers up to week 11 say consistency and back to what we all know of as a traditional estate agency market. You've got buyer demand, without a doubt, good buyer demand. We've got good seller demand. And I suppose the old phrase, the make hay while the sun's shining, I think it's not quite, I wouldn't say the sun is shining, but the sun's definitely out. So I think make hay while the sun's out because there's a marketplace to be had. And those numbers should give everybody A benchmark, but B, they should give them that belief that if they really do make an effort and they speak to people, yeah, not just rely on tech, if they call their data and they speak to people and they give good customer service, that there is some money to be made again.
Absolutely spot on. Thank you, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you he was good. That's why he's going to be coming back. But more importantly, thank you for watching the show. Thank you for your words of encouragement and also your constructive feedback and criticism. It is all taken in good grace. If there's a town or particular city that you want me to look at, I've got a long list, but please do add them on and I'll see what I can do. And we'll see you next week for week 12 of the Property Market Stats Show, where we'll get another guest, and we'll see you then. So thanks very much. Let's wave goodbye, Rob.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.